I guess for any of you who have children, you'll know that worrying is a full-time job as a parent, isn't it? There's something about the responsibility of being a parent can at times be overwhelming. You know, when you first discover that that you're pregnant or that your partner or spouse is pregnant, there's that worrying time leading up to the birth when you know that things could go wrong. And so anything which is slightly kind of different, you worry about it and you're worried thinking, oh no, is this going to all go wrong for us? And then it comes to the birth and, you know, the wife, or the mum, I mean, would obviously be worried about, you know, whether the birth would go well, would go smoothly. And the husband or the partner will be worried about whether the waters are going to break at an inappropriate time, and would he have to do the delivery and that kind of stuff, you know. And then once you're born and you're holding on to this little tiny bundle of life, you worry as you look and you think, I wonder if we'll bond. And I wonder when he or she grows up, whether they'll still like me. And I wonder what their future is going to be. And all of these things can kind of whirl around. And it gets to when they start becoming a toddler and they're starting to crawl around, and you kind of child-proof every cupboard and every drawer because you're fearful that they're going to hurt themselves or break something. And so you worry about that. And then the biggest worry is when they go to nursery, and you discover that there are children the same age as yours, but they're starting to talk quicker, and they're starting to walk faster. And you think, I've got some developmental issues with my child. You know, it's not as fast as someone else. All of those things can play out in your minds. Parenting is just one long worry. Well, that's been my experience. Some of you obviously are thinking, what? You haven't had my kids then, have you? All three of them. One is here, actually. Yeah, when I spoke about the developmental issues, sorry, Sam, sorry. But when you get to I mean, I'm not even going to go to teenage life when they go to parties, get boyfriends and girlfriends and head off to uni. I tell you, that's even worse. That moves from worry to anxiety, I think. But I love that we could have the dedication today for Orla. And Martin and Sarah are just the most amazing parents. They are the most chilled parents. But they will already have experienced this, but they will experience it going forward. That parenting can be a worrying experience. Why? Because worry is just a part of life, isn't it? But also, worry can be kind of over-consuming for our lives. And that's when the worry and anxiety can become a problem in people's lives. It affects our well-being, it affects our health, it affects our relationships, it affects our sleep, when worry and anxiety begins to take over. It was World Mental Health Day on Friday. I don't know whether you were aware of that. And so I thought I would just have a quick look at some stats on the mentalhealth.org.uk website, just to see what kind of issues is happening in our country at the moment. I could only find some stats going back to March 2024, or 23, sorry. But they did a survey of over 6,000 adults, and they asked them to record if they were worried or anxious over the past 2 weeks. And these were the outcomes, that 73% of those people felt anxious for some of the time over the last 2 weeks, and 20% felt anxious most or all of the time. And they also, as they kind of broke down the various groups, they discovered that highest anxiety was found amongst the 18 to 34-year-olds. And the others within that group were single parents, there were carers, and members of the LGBTQ community. So anxiety and worry affects us all. And I think this is such a relevant issue. It's why they have a World Mental Health Day, because it is such an issue. And we're into this part 5 of this series called The Good Life, because all of us want to live the good life, don't we? The problem is we're not quite sure what the good life is and how it is that we get there. And so we tend to be thinking through, you know, when I have more money, when I have a better house, when I have a life partner, when I have children or grandchildren, when I get more stuff, when I get a better job, when my health is better, then I'll be able to discover the good life. And it's always as if it's just out there, but we can't quite grasp it. So in this series, what we've been doing is we've gone back to a man called Jesus and of what he had to say about living the good life. And it's found within 3 chapters in the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew was one of the followers of Jesus, and he wrote an account of Jesus' life. And he recorded some of these best teachings of Jesus, bringing it all together into one sermon. Lessons from the greatest sermon ever told. And so far, in this series, we've looked at what it is to have the blessed life, what it is to live a purposeful life and a righteous life and the connected life. But maybe there's more to it than that. Maybe we could live these: the carefree life, the no hassle or hurried life, or the no problem, no challenge, or no disappointing life. I mean, wouldn't that be a dream? Well, as Jesus was writing about or speaking about the good life, he says none of those. This is what he goes on to say, and this is really hard. He said this: therefore I tell you, you ready? Do not worry about your life. A man called Paul, years later, as he tried to explain more of what Jesus had taught, he came up with these words. He says, do not be anxious about anything. Now, have you ever been in an experience where you have really worried and panicked and just been so anxious over a situation, and someone comes up to you and says, oh, you don't need to worry about that? What do you want to do? Slap them. It is so unhelpful, isn't it? So unhelpful. Oh, I'm really worried. Oh, don't worry. Honestly, it is so annoying. So is Jesus being annoying here when he says, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life? What was Jesus meaning when he said that worry and anxiety, well, what was he meaning? What Jesus was going on to say is that there is an antidote to worry and anxiety. What's the difference between the two? Well, I'll just bring these up here. Worry is a thought-based response to a specific concern. You're worried about something at work, and what happens is that it stays in your mind, and you play it round and over and over and over again, and that worry kind of gets bigger and bigger. Anxiety is a physical and emotional response to a perceived threat. It's why anxiety often leads to some physical health issues, because it affects our body. So when Jesus says that we don't have to worry about our life, what Jesus did was he used a very specific term. It's the word that comes up here, merimneo. And merimneo means this: it's an over-anxious or a state of anxiety or worry, distracted or pulled in different directions. In other words, he was linking both worry and anxiety together in that one word. We have an old English word for worry. It was this: it's worgen. And worgen is another word for worry, and it means to strangle the life out of. Have you ever had worry that's strangling the life out of you? It is strangling the joy and the peace out of your life. Well, that's why Jesus says that's not the good life. When you're experiencing that, that is not the good life. So what is Jesus saying? Well, maybe we can learn from Disney. Maybe it's this: Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful phrase. Hakuna Matata, yeah, you know it, don't you? What does it mean? Yeah, well done. Very good. That's it. No more worries for the rest of your day. So this is Swahili. It's a little Swahili saying. So is that what Jesus is saying? That we don't have to worry for the rest of our days? Hey, we just live free. It sounds lovely. Or maybe we have to go to just an amazing musician to learn what it means. Maybe it's this. You know, don't worry about a thing, 'cause it's great. You see, we don't need the band, do we? It's great. It's great. Well, is it that we don't have to worry about a thing? You know, I might have a health issue, but I don't have to worry about a thing. I might have lost my job, but I don't have to worry about a thing. Is that what it is? Is that what Jesus is saying? I don't think that is what he's saying here. Because to feel worry and anxiety is actually normal. It is. It's normal. But to feed worry and anxiety actually is really dangerous. And it's this that Jesus was speaking into. I remember speaking to a friend during the early stages of COVID when lockdown had happened and we weren't able to go out and see people. And I remember calling a friend of mine, and each time that I called, he was becoming more pessimistic. He was getting lower. He was more fearful. And he was so concerned about what was happening in our country. And I asked him what was he doing for him to feel so bad. And he told me that he watched the news briefing every single day. And whenever there was something in the media about COVID, he was watching it. And what it was doing, it was feeding his anxiety. So he was worried that his wife would die, that his kids would. It had got so out of control. Because you see, to feel worry and anxiety is normal, but to feed it, it's so dangerous. So please hear this, that Jesus doesn't condemn us if we worry or if we're anxious. He knows that that's part of everyday life for us. So if we feel it, it's okay. If we feed it, Jesus is saying that's not okay. And he speaks about two areas that can feed anxiety and worry in our lives. The first one he speaks about is money. He says this: no one can serve two masters. Either you'll hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You can't serve both God and money. Now that always seems a little bit strange to me. You can't serve both God and money. You know, money is neutral. You know, everyone needs money, don't we? So what was he getting at when he was saying that? Well, the English word for money was mammon. And mammon means money becoming like a god to us. It's the thing that we pursue in life. It's the most important. It's the treasure a person trusts in. So when we allow money to be our treasure that we trust in, when we pursue that in life, worry and anxiety will always follow. And it's not just for those of us who struggle with enough money. It's also very true for those of us who have enough money or lots of money. Because when you have it, you think you have a lot to lose. And it's always about getting that little bit more and that little bit more. And it becomes a pursuit that can lead to all kinds of problems. We get a little bit more so we can buy a little bit more, which then puts us a little bit more in debt. All of those issues come up time and time again. So how do we fight this mammon, to stop ourselves from putting our trust in treasure rather than anywhere else? Well, I think the big word is this. It's generosity. Generosity, being willing to give from what we have. Last month, Sam, Eliza, and we headed off to Wembley and we went to see Coldplay in concert. Just the most amazing experience. If you'd wanted to go and you couldn't because you couldn't get tickets, bad luck. I got there, and it was the most amazing concert. It really was. But before and after the various kind of warm-up acts, on the big screens they were showing who Coldplay kind of support and where they put money into various charities. One of them was planting trees in Brazil because the rainforests have been so attacked by deforestation that they're wanting to try and make a difference there. And so they're putting lots of money into that. In cleaning the oceans, they're very much environmental in the things that they support. And I discovered that Coldplay have made the decision to give 10% of all of their earnings and income towards these charities. And it just struck me that whether you like their music or not, they have got a proper perspective on this, that money isn't just to be held onto tightly, but money is to be shared out. It's to be demonstrating generosity. A man called John Wesley, who started the Methodist movement, as in the Methodist Church, he once said this: earn all you can, save all you can, give all you can. And we look at that and think, well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, hey? I'm not so sure about, yeah, you know what it is. And often when people think about money, they think about it in this. So we earn enough to live, and if there's some left over from that, then we will look to save some. And if there's some left over from that, we will look to give some. And if you think about it, that's how most of us will choose to live. We earn to live, to save, and to give. But I think the way in which Jesus, when he's spoken about money, he would flip that around. He would flip it to this: to give first, to save, and to live on the rest. Now, for some of us, that might sound really frightening, but that's because it's where we put our trust. It's what we think will bring us security. Sarah and I, throughout all of our marriage, have always looked to give first. It's part of our practice. Why? Because we know that money could easily become an issue for us, and we could always think, well, we haven't quite got enough, we need to be doing more, all of that. And I don't want that stress, and I don't want that worry, so we choose to set aside a certain amount every single month, and then we will save where we can, and we live off the rest. And honestly, it is freeing. It is so freeing. Because there is something about releasing that is empowering, and we discover a sense of peace. The second area that Jesus spoke about when it comes to worry and anxiety is basically just stuff for the rest of life. Jesus goes on to say this. He says, therefore I tell you, don't worry about your life, what you'll eat or drink, or about your body or what you'll wear. Is not life more than food, and body more than clothes? Eating, drinking, wearing clothes, basically the stuff of life. So what's the antidote to worry and anxiety with the stuff of life? Well, Jesus doesn't give us 10 steps or 7 keys or a 4-point plan. He gives us one thought, and it's this. It's that word there. It's trust. Trust. Trust is God's antidote to worry and anxiety. The problem is that it's easier said than done. Trust is about releasing control into the hands of someone else. And that's great in theory, but it's flipping hard in practice. And if you're a follower of Jesus here today, you know how hard it is to live up to what we say that we believe, to really put our trust in Jesus. So how do we know we can trust God? How do we know we can trust God with whatever our worry and anxiety in life is? Well, Jesus goes on to say, he says this: I want you to look up to start with. I want you to look up to the skies. Look at the birds. He says the birds don't fret, the birds don't panic, they don't worry, they're not anxious, and do you know what? God feeds them. Isn't that amazing? So these birds, they're not all stressed out by it. And then after that, he says, I want you to now look out over the fields. And when he said that and the people were to look out, he says, just look at the flowers. The flowers, I mean, they are so passive. At least birds fly around. Flowers just flower, don't they? They just stay static. And yet look how God has clothed them. This picture here is taken from Norfolk. When Sarah and I went on holiday earlier this year, we were driving past. We could not believe just the beauty of this poppy field. And so we stopped and took about 300 photographs. There was one that was worth showing. But isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? And what Jesus is saying is this. He says, look, if the birds don't have to worry about food because I provide for them, and if the flowers don't have to worry about what they look like because I clothe them in such beauty, how much more valuable are you, and how much more will I provide for you? What Jesus was doing was saying, you've got to trust God. You've got to trust God. A man called Rich Villodas, who wrote a book called The Narrow Path, which this series is based on, along with the Life Central series that we've been using resources from. Richard Villodas said this: the images we have of God in our head determine the degree of worry we feel in our souls. So what's our view of God? Is he someone that we can trust, who is good, who has big hands and wide arms to be able to cope with the stuff that we're worried about? Or is he someone to be avoided? Jesus challenges his listeners to ask themselves what road they're really on. And he says this. I love this version. This is from the Message version. He says this: people who don't know God and the way he works fuss over these things. But you know both God and how he works. Steep your life in God reality, God initiative, God provisions. Don't worry about missing out. You'll find your everyday human concerns will be met. Jesus is saying, trust God. Trust God. Which sounds fine, but how do we do that? Well, a man called Peter gives us a bit of an insight. Peter was one of the followers of Jesus too, and he wrote a letter near the end of the collection of books called the Bible. And he wrote this verse, and he says, cast all your anxiety, your cares, your worries, your merimneo, that word, remember? Cast all of your anxieties on him. Why? Because he cares for you. When you get anxious or when you get worried, Peter is saying, it's like holding on to something and just launching it, throwing it, so that your hand is free. Rather than holding on tightly to it, your hand is then free. I grew up with my dad, who loved sports, but his favorite sport was cricket. So cricket has become kind of my favorite sport. There's a little picture here of the England men's wicketkeeper, a guy called Jamie Smith. And if you watch cricket and you're not falling asleep, then you'll know that whenever the ball is bowled, it will always go, if the batsman leaves it, it will always go to the wicketkeeper. Why? Because the wicketkeeper's got these great big gloves, and those gloves protect. And so that when the ball comes down at 90 miles an hour, and it's a really hard, solid ball, the wicketkeeper can take it quite easily. Why? Because he's the one who's got the big hands. He's the one who's got the gloves that can take the pressure off that. When we hold on to our worries and our concerns, it can weigh us down. It's not just in our hands. Often it's in our shoulders, isn't it? We feel weighed down. And Jesus is saying, you can launch it. I've got the biggest wicketkeeper gloves ever. Honestly, my hands are big enough, my arms are wide enough to be able to take and carry your worry so that you can live free. But you have to trust me. You have to trust me. Jesus said this as he concluded this section. He says, therefore, don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. About 25 years ago, when Sarah, my first wife, was diagnosed with cancer and found that the cancer had gone to her liver, which we knew that therefore she was not going to kind of recover from it. I remember having those thoughts of what on earth's going to happen. And those thoughts start to play around in your head. What's going to happen? How are the kids going to cope? How am I going to cope? Poor Sarah, what's going on? And I remember very early on being taken by a guy called Robin Johnson to a church in Stowmarket, to the Stowmarket Parish Church. They'd got a Peruvian speaker speaking. I don't know why Robin had invited me, but I went along and I sobbed throughout the whole flipping service. I was in such a mess at the time. I don't remember anything that he said other than these words. He was quoting what God has to say, that when God says, my grace is sufficient for you. My grace is sufficient for you. And I remember hearing that, and it changed everything for me. Rather than panicking about the future, I knew that what God had for me was for today. And when it came to tomorrow, which would then be today, his grace would be sufficient again. And it really changed how we spent the last year of Sarah's life together, because we didn't have to worry about the future, about tomorrow, because, blimey, there were enough things to worry about if that was the case. But I came to learn to live with, well, whatever it is that I'm worried about today, God, I'm going to throw it at you, because you can catch it and you can take it. And it allows me to be free. And what happens? A man called Isaiah, I love this verse. This is so beautiful. Receive this. You will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, all whose thoughts are fixed on you. Do you know what? You cannot worry yourself to peace. You can't. But you can trust and discover the outworking of peace in your life. And peace is where the good life is found, isn't it? We don't want to live anxious, worried-filled lives which drag us down, which strangle the life out of us. No, God's got something better for us. And he says, trust me, cast all your anxiety onto me. Why? Because I care for you. So can you trust God? I mean, you can try it today. You can try it today by saying, God, this has lived with me for so long and it's ruining me. It's strangling me. God, I want to give this to you. Can I ask that we stand together, please? Let me pray. Lord, you understand that worry and anxiety are just part of life. But I know, God, that you don't want us to feed that and to live under the huge weight of that. And so you tell us to cast our burdens, our cares, our anxieties onto you because you care for us. Would you help us to do just that, to trust you, to trust you? And maybe for some of you here, just to hold your hands out in front of you. If this is helpful to you, you don't need to do it, but if this is helpful to you, just to hold your hands out. And it's as if those worries that you've lived with over this past week are there in your hands. And you can just metaphorically just launch them forward, launch them to God. And to say, God, I don't want to carry that anymore. I trust you. There is no one better than you who can handle these situations. So I release it. Release my worry to you. Yeah, thank you, Lord. Thank you that you are able to bring that peace as we trust. In Jesus' name, amen.